and welcome to Tony's Table, where conversational gastronomy is the main course. Pull up a chair and fill up your plate as we talk our way towards building community and connection, one story at a time. I'm Tony Boyette. Let's dig in. I grew up on what we will call the functional side of the restaurant industry. That is to say, my family ate out a lot. By the time I entered 6th grade, I was making reservations. We've known a lot of chefs and restaurateurs over the years, and my next guest, Sol Bashirian, possesses a natural talent within the kitchen and beyond, into the dining room as well as into the community. Since my first visit to this community treasure in 2019, they have become dear friends, regular staples in our dining adventures, and they recently opened their second location in the new Clippers Stadium complex, which is kind of a big deal. Sol and his sister Ghazi own and operate Sunday Gravy in Inglewood, California. I have the absolute pleasure of talking to a dear friend, Sol Bashirian, chef, proprietor, magic maker at Sunday Gravy in Inglewood, California. Sol, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Despite the person who brought us together.
I know.
Who shall not be named. But I think I've mentioned this before. My beloved Norman has this affinity for finding amazing restaurants, and 9 times out of 10 he says, "Oh, I want to go to this place," and I get pissed off thinking, why the hell can't I just make this decision? Why don't you just ever ask what do I want to do? And then we get there and it turns out to be glorious. Well, going to Sunday Gravy was like the creme de la creme. If you find yourself anywhere in the greater LA area, you must go there. So I'm so glad that you're here, and this is probably the most guilt-ridden interview I did, because I invited Sol and his fabulous wife Paulina over for dinner, and Ghazi, you got to get here next time. And they walked in. My menu was a little askew because the meat dish I wanted to make wasn't available from the butcher, so I had to get these steaks, these ribeyes, and I'm not that good with steak. So Sol jumped in and took care of it. Thank you, dear.
You're welcome.
So you're, like I said, you're the proprietor and chef at Sunday Gravy, but let's go back a little bit. You are from Los Angeles.
Yes,
right?
Born and raised. Yeah, I grew up in Westchester, Playa del Rey area.
And what made you think about getting into chefing, cooking, the culinary world?
So my dad, he owned restaurants in LA. They were, it's called Gino's Pizza. And so I grew up in that whole restaurant life. I think as far as finding a love for cooking, my mom's side of the family, they're all artists. They're so creative. They're so, musically talented. They paint, they play instruments, they sing, they write poetry, and play piano. And I just, my hand-eye coordination's bad. My balance is bad. My drawing skills were bad. And I felt this, sort of jealousy maybe that I didn't have an artistic skill. And then, tagging along with my dad, to the restaurants when I was a kid on summer vacations. It was always a fun experience because, I'd be in this kitchen and I felt this sense of like empowerment in a way that like, oh, this is my dad's place. And like, I'm so happy to be here. And so like, it got to a point where, I would start to try to create, small things in the restaurant. My dad would, to keep me busy, would give me a piece of dough and I'd play with the dough and I'd, that would keep me preoccupied. But then as I got older, I was like, well, let me put something on this dough. Hey, let me bake these mini pizzas.
You found your creative strain.
And I found it through there. And then, I always thought that like I would get into journalism. I would get into, like politics, even maybe law. And, when I met my first girlfriend, it was right around the time that I kind of got forced into taking home economics. And that was the last class ever at my high school that that had home economics. After my year, they got rid of it. But like, that was such a fun class for me because
Were you the only guy in it?
no. We had there were other guys in it. But you know, the whole idea of like, oh, we can cook was fun because then I would cook and I'd bring something to my girlfriend and she would eat it and she would like it. And that desire of like making her happy got me to really just get into cooking. Yeah.
Oh, that's
and
so
it just
cool.
sort of went from there. And it's just so many twists and turns because I have such a unconventional way of getting to where I'm at right now with owning a restaurant. Because I feel like it's so non-traditional when you look at other restaurateurs and other chefs. They worked at so many restaurants. They've worked under so many different chefs. And I didn't do any of that. You know, I cooked for friends. I cooked for girlfriends. I cooked for my wife. And then I cooked for a sorority. And then I did catering. And then I did, you know, I worked at a diner. And you know, now I own a restaurant.
But you know, I got to cut you off. Or I got to intervene right here because I hear you describing your background and what I see happening at Sunday Gravy. Like, I'm going to cry because it's like this community. Like, this is the only restaurant I think I can go into in Los Angeles, much less in Inglewood. And I'm seeing humanity, like a diversity of humanity. I'm telling you, every color, race, creed, sexuality, gender, you know, conforming or non-conforming in your dining room. And the fact is, you're cooking from a place of not business. Yes, you're business-minded, but this is coming from a nurturing place, a place of satisfying people and literally feeding, as opposed to, I'm just going to create this greatest thing in the world and people are going to pay high dollar for it and I'm going to get these awards and accolades. I mean, it's genuine. I know a lot of chefs. I don't know many chefs who are that genuine with the craft.
I mean, I would say that I was humbled a lot. You know, when I got into cooking out of culinary school, the big thing at that time was molecular gastronomy and El Bulli. And, you know, I would look at photos of things and I'd be like, that whole artistic, like, insecurity would come in. I'd be like, I can never make stuff like this. And it kind of killed my passion for cooking because then I would try to do that kind of stuff. It would fail miserably. You could see that, like, it wouldn't go over well with friends that I would cook for. And it really kind of turned me off to even wanting to continue to cook. But because of the restaurant business being in my family, I stayed in it somehow, but I just kind of veered more then towards front of house, hospitality.
Okay.
And I worked at the coffee company here in Westchester.
Oh, that's a family favorite.
It is, yeah, and it's a family favorite for a lot of locals in this area. And Gus, who owns the coffee company, him and my dad came up around the same time. They know each other. He's like my uncle. And Gus took me under his wing over there. And you know, for me it was kind of a departure from what I was doing because it was a diner. It was breakfast food. It was, you know, biscuits and gravy. It was eggs. It was and Gus came to me and was like, I want you to do my lunch specials. So that gave me this sense of empowerment again, like this creativity, because Gus would go and he'd find something on special and he would show me and he'd be like, can you make something with this? And then boom, like, you know, the wheels would turn and I would make the special.
Again, appealing to that creative strain that you didn't know was there, but that's really your strength.
And it was awesome because then you'd see my special sold out, or the soup that I made became really popular. People started requesting that soup, or people started requesting, for the things that I made for that special to come back. And I felt really good. And then one thing about, if you go to the coffee company and you see Gus, he's just this like larger than life figure who loves what he does. He just goes through the dining room. It's like a beautiful thing to see when you see this guy with his hospitality, and he just knows his stuff. Like the difference between Gus and my dad did the restaurant thing because that was what was going to put food on the table and and he just ran with it and became really successful. But if my dad became a successful, he came originally here to become a pilot. If he became a successful pilot, that would have been what he would have done. My dad just did what he had to do. Whereas Gus loves the restaurant industry. He loves that. And, you know, being able to bond with him on that level as my love for the restaurant industry grew was great, because then I saw his hospitality, you know, strengths. And he told me, he's like, you know, make your restaurant in a way that I don't want them to come for the food. I want them to come to see me. And I would see that happen every single day, that people were coming to see Gus. It wasn't like, oh, let's go to the coffee. People were coming there every single day. I knew, like, I started to notice the people that were there right at the time, that every single day, the guy at 11 o'clock, the guy at 7 a.m., the guy, and they were all there to see Gus, shoot the shit with him, laugh, talk, joke around, and just watching that, like, I loved it.
Wow, hearing you describe Gus, I feel like you could be talking about yourself. I mean, just the way you go through the dining room, you know, you're there to meet the folks, and you are the draw. And we got to go, Steve, tomorrow to the coffee. It's the coffee company.
The coffee company, yeah.
Right. Okay, and I haven't been in ages.
You might see me there.
Okay, cool. What time do they open?
He's open at 7 a.m.
Oh,
yeah,
nice. Okay.
He usually he'll get there around 9, 10 o'clock.
And that's another Westchester institution. It's been around for a long time.
Yeah.
I neglected to mention at Sunday Gravy we're talking Italian fare.
Yes.
And man, the best Brussels sprouts ever.
Oh,
I mean,
thank you.
I love everything on this man's menu. Those Brussels sprouts, I've had dinner parties and have ordered like 3 orders of Brussels sprouts to serve. And I do not lie. I do not say that I made them. I'm very clear about where they come from. But what made you lean towards Italian?
So the Italian was for me, a natural progression, sort of like, from what my dad was doing, because he had a pizzeria.
Right.
And then as it sort of, grew, it became more than a pizzeria. There were, certain pasta dishes, but then it was hamburgers, then it was sandwiches and subs, fried seafood. And, but the Italian part always resonated with me. And, kind of going back to, when I really started to kind of not be, down on, when I started going down again on cooking and like not really enjoying it as much, I really started looking into Italian food. And what drew me to that was the simplicity and like how great food is from that area and from the different regions. And then you look at them and it's just like a tiny amount of ingredients, but a lot of love and just a lot of quality, of those ingredients. And that again resonated with me because I always thought food had to be complicated for it to be good, that it had to have a lot of ingredients for it to be good, that you have to do a lot with it to make it enjoyable for people, or to even like get people to be excited about it.
Did you pick up that concept in culinary school about it having to be complicated, or it's just something you picked up from your own consciousness?
I guess I just sort of, like I said, when I saw that molecular gastronomy was the hot thing while I was in school and everybody wanted to do that and it was so fancy and all the restaurants that were opening sort of had that, and, using ingredients that I couldn't comprehend and all these techniques. And, I even bought the Alinea cookbook.
Oh, geez.
And I would look through it and there was not a single recipe in that cookbook that I could like see myself making. And that like just kind of killed me because I thought, oh, I'll buy this cookbook and I can make this food and my friends will be super into it and they'd think it's super cool and like, these skills that I picked up. And no, it was definitely not that. And it brought my confidence down. And yeah, it just made me not happy about cooking. And then, looking at, fast forward, learning about Italian food, and honestly, watching a lot of Gordon Ramsay videos on YouTube. And the Gordon Ramsay that we get in the United States, the drama, the loud music, the Hell's Kitchen and the Kitchen Nightmares, that's a completely different person than the Gordon Ramsay that was introduced to Britain and the shows that are there. When you watch the Kitchen Nightmares, for example, in the United States, it's all about, let's make this restaurant look bad. It's really dirty. And here comes the hero.
Sensationalism is what's going to sell in this country, unfortunately.
Whereas over there, when you watch Kitchen Nightmares, you're like taking lessons on how to be a chef, a restaurateur. And that would just bring me this comfort. And then again, like, confidence starting to rise, because all he would preach was simple ingredients, just a passion for what you're doing, organization, and just like staying true to yourself, and watching that so much, like over and over and over again, and just taking the lessons from that. Man, I got so excited again, because then I see this guy who's got like Michelin stars, and he's got some of the best restaurants in the world, and what you're seeing on his plate is just the like simple food, but just tastes good, and it makes people happy.
It's true. I'm so glad that you got inspired. Thank you, Mr. Ramsay.
Yeah.
And we'll give him one more plug he doesn't need, which is I'd only seen Gordon Ramsay. I don't watch any cooking shows, and I worked as a caterer for a very long time. I just didn't watch much TV. And what I knew of Gordon Ramsay was the sensationalist, the loudmouth that we get here. So I was really not inclined to go to his restaurants. I was in London Heathrow, and had an extended layover because something was wrong with our plane, and they had to get a new one for us. So we had about a 4-hour layover. And I went to his restaurant in Heathrow, and I mean, it was the most incredible breakfast I'd ever had. And I was there long enough that we slid into lunch, and I'd already just had eggs and pancakes and like this rasher of bacon. But then I saw on the lunch menu he had one of my favorite desserts, sticky toffee pudding. And I thought, all right, this guy probably does it well. And it was transcendent. It was the best. So that made me get more interested in him, and looking at what his program with kids. He's a totally different person.
Yeah, way different.
He's really nurturing and
way different.
Yeah. Oh man. So I'm glad that he was there to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That, and also I will say, I spent some time at Lemonade.
Oh, you did?
I did. Yeah, I was a general manager. So when I left the kitchen, I became a general man. I worked up to become a general manager of Lemonade in
all of them, or
Manhattan Beach.
Okay.
So that was my store. And also Alan, who was the chef at Lemonade, and he was the founder. Lemonade kind of took Southern California by storm, especially the LA area, with the concept of and when you would talk to Alan and he would talk about what the inspiration was like for him. He was like, hey, I'm a chef. I would come home and, I want to eat something, and I'd see like, what do I have? Okay, I got leftover chicken breast. Okay, hey, I have, this veg. Hey, I have this fruit. Let me put together a vinaigrette. And so like that resourceful thinking and kind of just how to feed a chef, and what the chef's life is of coming home after a late shift and trying to, feed himself. That created a brand that was just, really insane for a while in Los Angeles. Like Lemonade was becoming this,
I keep seeing them pop up.
They were popping up everywhere. And, when I would see Alan kind of demo new salads that we're going to be doing, again, you think that it's complicated, but all it was just vivid colors, good ingredients, the balance of sweet, sour, salty, bitter, the right acidity, and just those concepts again. And you're like, wow, like look at this guy. He's created a multi-million-dollar brand He's you know, and it's off of just simplicity and good ingredients. And again, like that just made me more again confident in like my abilities, and like, hey, it doesn't have to be this like crazy, you know, like road where you have to like wow everyone and make your food look like this, you know, make it honestly look amazing, but does it really taste that good?
You know, thank you. Exactly. And that's, you know, the one thing about going into your place, it feels like you're going into Nana's kitchen or Grandma or Bubby's kitchen, and the food looks lovely. The taste just, you know, you like the smells sort of carry you away as soon as you walk in the door. And again, the sense of connection that's fostered there. I mean, people, you know, people are usually happy when they go to eat out. You know, people are generally in a good mood. Man, people are like, when we pull in, because there's a driveway, there's a narrow driveway with parking spaces on angles, parking spaces on the right, and then the restaurants on the left. You know, people, if they're waiting to go in, if they're waiting to be seated, because yes, people, if you get there late in the day, you're going to have to wait. People sort of split into the parking lot, but they all move out of the way when a car pulls in. Everybody is smiling and waving at you when you pull in, like they know you, because this is, you know, what you have fostered, you know, this great sense of community. Is this something that was sort of like it just evolved, or was that one of your goals in opening a restaurant, was to really have, you know, I want something with diverse clientele and people to be not just on good behavior, but just really happy while they're there, even waiting?
For us, because of the space, right? So the space that we took over was my dad's first restaurant. It was the first restaurant he had ever opened up. I didn't realize
it was his first one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was the first restaurant he had ever opened up, and it was the last one to close.
Okay.
And for us, you know, my dad had been around for you know, opening restaurants in LA for a really long time. He hit, you know, 12 locations at one point, and all of his restaurants were in areas that were underserved. So Inglewood, Gardena, Hawthorne, you know, and I remember when we, you know, were opening Sunday Gravy, I made it a point to go to the neighboring businesses, especially the restaurants, and introduce ourselves and let them know who we were, because I didn't want the community to think that like, hey, this is just, you know, like, you know, two new people coming into town, they're changing things up.
Right.
It was very important for us to let people know that this is a continuation of what our dad started.
I was going to say, this is legacy, and this is legacy, you, and you grew up in this area. Basically, you know, you grew up in that restaurant.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing I wanted to say. Excuse me, earlier, you mentioned that you had a circuitous or a non-traditional route into being a restaurateur, but I'm listening to that and I'm thinking, well, no, you grew up in the restaurant industry, actually.
Yeah.
You know, you had probably the best kind of background for doing what you do now. Even if it was circuitous, you know, it was definitely a
roundabout way, but yes, like I feel that was always what I was going to be destined to eventually do, you know, and I had to do it to prove it to myself, really, that I could do it.
And you did it your own way.
And yeah, did it our own way. And again, the community thing was important, you know. And you know, as we started introducing ourselves to people, you know, one of the days we went to the Serving Spoon and we introduced ourselves to the owners there. And you know, as we were telling our story, they would be like, "Well, we know your dad, and you know, we're grateful for your dad because, you know, your dad took a chance on an area that a lot of people wouldn't. And our choices were always, you know, this fast food place or that fast food place. And your dad brought quality to areas that like didn't have that. We weren't given quality. No one gave us a chance to even have quality, but your dad did that for us." And as I was hearing more and more of that story from people, it was the same. A lot of people were giving that same answer. And, you know, then I would tell my dad, and like my dad had no idea, super clueless to any of that. He's like, I just thought I was just doing what I thought I had to do and how I wanted to do it. And I was like, no, you were important. Like you did something that a lot of people genuinely like appreciated, and you should be proud of that. And so really from the get-go, like Sunday Gravy was about, we need to be for the neighborhood, we need to be for the people around us. So we didn't do any PR, we didn't do any advertising. It was word of mouth. Hey, we heard about you from our neighbor. Hey, we heard about you from our neighbor. We had postcards that told a little bit about us. It was our story. It was 15% off, off your visit. We would hand them out to anybody that walked in and asked about us. And then they would come back, hand us the coupon. We say, no, give this to someone else. They would take that, give it to their, no. They would come, then boom, by the time, like, sometimes you'd get these cards back and look like they've been passed through, like, 10 different hands. And it just, the word spread, and then COVID happened, and the community carried us, because they're just those like few months of building relationships with our guests. They carried us through COVID.
And how long after you opened did COVID?
Oh, so we opened at the end of September 2019.
Oh, sweet Jeezy Peasy.
Yeah.
So we came and saw you before COVID, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, man. Okay, so I'm proud to say we were among the first customers.
Yeah, you were. Yeah, you were there when it was just me and my sister.
Yeah, exactly.
I was in the back cooking. She was in the front.
Yeah,
I remember Norman made a fuss about the Lambrusco being out, or one of the wines being out.
Yeah, he's special. And this is by the, I don't even know where to go with this one. This is how I can tell you are living by and working with your principles. Because if you can deal with the Norman Chad and you're coming into your place on a regular basis, just being as the special case he is, you still treat him and you still feed him, and he, I couldn't do it. I don't, actually. But there was something else to that point I wanted to say. Living your principles, like, that's a big part of what's making you a success. And I'm happy to see it. I could just hear and gush all night, because just hearing your story now, I didn't know a lot of this. And you do get this from your father. Your father coming in, yes, he's thinking he's doing what he has to do to put food on the table, but he's living with these principles of being in these underserved areas. I've lived in areas where there was nothing but fast food. The question I had in mind is leaving my head. Oh, I know what it was. Okay. Can you tell the story about the special person you met in Costco?
We're talking about Roy Choi?
Yes.
Yeah. That was a really cool moment.
I felt excited for you when you told me this. I mean, the glow on your face. And I was like, I'm not surprised. Go ahead.
Yeah, that was a cool moment, because, to be recognized by someone of that stature, for me as a chef, it gave me so much validity in what I was doing. I was sitting outside Costco on a day off, and I just see a familiar face walk by, and I would never do this. There's only a few people where I've stopped, because in LA it's a faux pas to gush over the celebs or whatnot. You don't do that if you grew up here. But I did that. I did that for Kobe Bryant. And I did that for Roy Choi when I saw him. And I had to pull him aside and say, hey, I told him how much of an inspiration that he is for me. And I, told him that I just opened my first restaurant too. And, he said, what's your restaurant? I said, Sunday Gravy. And he's like, oh, yeah, man, I've been hearing things about you. And just hearing that, I was like, just shell-shocked, because I'm just cooking, I'm just cooking, and,
So for those of people who have maybe been living in a cave, tell us who Roy Choi is, please.
Yeah, I mean, I would say Roy Choi is probably one of the most important LA chefs. With what he has done. He grew up in Koreatown, and he grew up amongst diversity, and through his food, you just see like the LA melting pot, especially like Latin and Korean, coming together. And his first and like biggest venture was Kogi, And if you're in LA, you know what kogi is.
Right, exactly.
And that started the food truck revolution. And
yeah, exactly. And there was the Korean tacos.
The Korean tacos.
But people know if they come to town.
His footprints and fingerprints are just everywhere along LA, cooking. And again, it's simplicity, and it's staying true to your flavors, and it's staying true to, it's hospitality. Because when you meet him, he's one of the nicest dudes, and he's in the trenches with his staff, and that's the way that I am. And
I was just gonna say, just like you, and we only have like 30 seconds left, but I also wanted to point out that you've got a full contingency of staff now, and you can tell the staff is treated like family. Like you guys are like a family at that restaurant, and that's fantastic. Is there anything that I forgot to ask you, or anything else you want to add?
No, I think we covered it. I'm always down to come back and
all right,
we can chat it up some more.
We can definitely do this again. Thank you so much, and I promise I won't make you cook next time.
No, you're good. I loved it.
Oh my
gosh. I loved it. It's about community.
There you go. Sol, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And when I run away from home, I'm going to come live with you and Paulina.
Let's
get my room ready, man.
Let's do it.
Thank you for joining us today. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you next time.
Tony's Table is written by Tony Boyette and produced and edited by Steve Devoni. If you'd like more information, or would like to send a message to Tony, or make a comment, or just gab about great restaurant towns, please visit us at tonystable.com. That's TONISTABLE.com. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.